What the hell are you doing here? Get your ghetto ass back to wherever you crawled out from before I call security to drag you out. The vicious words poured from Reginald Whitmore's mouth like poison. The billionaire's eyes burned with pure hatred as he towered over Amara Johnson. You don't belong with civilized people. Know your damn place, he roared. Without warning, Whitmore's hands shot out and violently shoved Amara backward. Her body flew through the air before crashing into the pool with explosive force. Water erupted everywhere. Amara disappeared beneath the surface, her designer gown floating around her like a broken dream. When she surfaced, gasping and choking, mascara streamed down her face in black rivers. Whitmore adjusted his tuxedo, smirking with satisfaction. Around him, shocked guests held up phones, recording every second of the billionaire's racist assault. But what Reginald Whitmore didn't know was that the woman he just humiliated held the power to destroy his entire empire. And in exactly 23 minutes, his billion-dollar world would come crashing down. 3 days earlier, David Johnson sat in his glass-walled office overlooking downtown Atlanta's skyline. The morning sun cast long shadows across his mahogany desk where contracts worth millions waited for his signature. At 38, he had built TechFlow Industries from nothing into the most innovative software company in the Southeast. His fingers traced the edge of a particular document that made his pulse quicken. The header read, Whitmore Corporation Strategic Partnership Proposal, $1.20 billion. It was the deal that would catapult his company into the global arena. David's revolutionary artificial intelligence platform had caught the attention of every major corporation in America. But Reginald Whitmore had been the most aggressive suitor, flying down from New York twice in the past month with increasingly generous offers. "Baby, you're going to be late for lunch," came a warm voice from the doorway. Amara Johnson glided into the office wearing a tailored navy suit that accentuated her elegant frame. Her law degree from Harvard hung prominently on the wall behind David's desk, a reminder of the power couple they had become. As a partner at Morrison & Associates, she specialized in corporate law and had built her own impressive client base. "Just reviewing Whitmore's final proposal," David said, pulling her close. "He's desperate for our AI technology. His real estate empire is hemorrhaging money after the market crash. Without our predictive analytics software, his company will be bankrupt within 6 months." Amara studied the contract with her trained legal eye. The numbers were staggering. Whitmore was offering nearly double what their technology was worth on the open market. "He needs us more than we need him," she observed. "That puts you in the driver's seat." David nodded. Whitmore Corporation owned 40% of Atlanta's commercial real estate, but their outdated business model was failing catastrophically. They desperately needed David's AI platform to predict market trends and optimize their investments. "I'm meeting him tonight at the charity gala," David said. "He's hosting it at the Fairmont Grand Hotel. I want to finalize everything in person." The Children's Education Foundation Gala was Atlanta's most exclusive social event. Tickets cost $50,000 per person, and the guest list read like a who's who of Southern aristocracy. Whitmore used the annual event to network with politicians and intimidate business rivals. "I still don't trust him," Amara said, her instincts as a prosecutor making her cautious. His background check revealed some concerning patterns. Discrimination lawsuits that were quietly settled, minority-owned businesses that mysteriously lost contracts after dealing with him. David understood her concerns. During their negotiations, he had sensed something beneath Whitmore's polished exterior. The billionaire was always courteous in person, but David caught subtle signs of discomfort when discussing partnership details. Whitmore's handshake was always brief, his eye contact minimal. "He needs this deal to survive," David replied. "Personal prejudices become irrelevant when bankruptcy is the alternative." Meanwhile, across town in his marble-columned mansion, Reginald Whitmore paced his study like a caged animal. Financial reports covered his antique desk, each one painting a grimmer picture than the last. His family's real estate empire, built over 3 generations, was crumbling. The 2023 market crash had devastated his portfolio. Property values plummeted while construction costs soared. His company owed $700 million to creditors with payments due within 90 days. Without David's AI technology to guide strategic decisions, Whitmore Corporation would face liquidation. "Sir, the Johnson contract is ready for tonight," his assistant Margaret said nervously from the doorway. Whitmore's jaw clenched. The idea of depending on a black entrepreneur for salvation made his stomach turn. His grandfather had built this empire on the principle that certain people belonged in certain places. Now he was being forced to prostrate himself before someone he considered beneath his social class. "Make sure everything is perfect at the gala," he growled. "I need this deal signed tonight." Margaret nodded and retreated. She had worked for Whitmore for 15 years and recognized the dangerous edge in his voice. When his prejudices collided with his desperation, unpredictable things happened. That evening, David adjusted his black tuxedo in the bedroom mirror while Amara fastened her diamond earrings. Her midnight blue gown hugged her curves elegantly, and her natural beauty needed minimal makeup to radiate confidence. "Ready to make history?" she asked, taking his arm. David smiled, unaware that in 3 hours his wife would be fighting for her dignity in a hotel pool while his billion-dollar deal hung in the balance. The Fairmont Grand Hotel sparkled like a jewel against Atlanta's skyline. Valet attendants in crisp uniforms guided luxury vehicles under the marble archway, while photographers captured arriving guests. The charity gala represented the pinnacle of Southern high society, where million-dollar donations were discussed as casually as weekend plans. David and Amara stepped out of their black Tesla, immediately drawing attention from the crowd. Several guests whispered behind gloved hands, their conversations peppered with curiosity and barely concealed judgment. Some recognized David from business magazines, while others simply noticed the confident way the couple carried themselves. "Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, welcome," greeted the hotel manager with genuine warmth. His staff had been briefed about the evening's VIP guests. "Mr. Whitmore has been asking about your arrival every 10 minutes. Inside the grand ballroom, crystal chandeliers cast prismatic rainbows across walls lined with original oil paintings worth more than most people's homes. The scent of white orchids and expensive perfume filled the air, while a string quartet played classical melodies from a raised platform overlooking the crowd. Reginald Whitmore held court near the mahogany bar, surrounded by his usual circle of wealthy sycophants. Judge Harold Morrison, a man whose courtroom decisions had shaped Atlanta's legal landscape for decades, stood beside Senator Patricia Blake, whose family had controlled Georgia politics since Reconstruction. Bank President Charles Mitchell completed the trio, his financial institution holding mortgages on half the city's commercial properties. These weren't just Whitmore's friends, they were his insurance policy. Their combined influence could make or break careers, destroy reputations, and reshape entire industries with a few strategic phone calls. "There's our golden goose," Whitmore muttered to his companion, spotting David across the room. His knuckles whitened around his champagne flute. Time to close this deal before he gets any more uppity ideas. He approached the couple with practiced charm, his public mask firmly in place. Years of high society events had taught him to hide his true feelings behind layers of Southern gentleman facade. "David, Amara! So wonderful you could make it tonight," he gushed, his voice carrying just enough volume to let nearby guests overhear his apparent friendship with the couple. Whitmore's handshake with David lingered longer than usual, his desperation barely contained beneath his polished exterior. Sweat beaded along his hairline despite the ballroom's perfect climate control. "I hope you've had time to review our final proposal thoroughly," he said, his smile never wavering despite the urgency in his voice. "Very generous terms," David replied diplomatically, maintaining professional distance, "though I'm still evaluating all available options in the marketplace." Whitmore's smile tightened almost imperceptibly, a muscle in his jaw twitching with suppressed anxiety. Of course, but surely you understand the mutual benefits. My distribution network spans 47 countries. We could make your technology available globally within 18 months, maybe less." What Whitmore didn't mention was that 3 other tech companies had already rejected similar partnerships after researching his business practices. David's AI platform represented his last hope for survival, the only lifeline that could pull Whitmore Corporation back from the brink of financial ruin. "The global reach is certainly attractive," David acknowledged, though his tone remained noncommittal. "However, I want to ensure any partnership aligns with our company values and long-term strategic goals. Whitmore felt his desperation spike. Every minute of delay brought him closer to bankruptcy. His creditors were already circling like vultures, and his board of directors had scheduled an emergency meeting for Monday morning to discuss liquidation options. "Darling, I'm going to get some air," Amara interjected, sensing the mounting tension between the two men. Her legal instincts warned her that Whitmore's forced pleasantries masked something darker underneath. "The terrace by the pool looks absolutely lovely tonight." She glided away in her flowing midnight blue gown, her movement graceful and confident. Several male guests followed her with their eyes, though their wives quickly redirected their attention with sharp elbows and pointed glares. Whitmore watched her leave with an expression David couldn't quite read, a mixture of resentment and something more sinister that made David's protective instincts flare. "Beautiful wife you have there," Whitmore commented, his voice carrying an undertone that made David's shoulders tense. "Though I imagine the corporate world can be particularly challenging for people like her." David's jaw tightened, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. "Amara graduated summa cum laude from Harvard Law School. She's more qualified than most people in this room, including several sitting at your board of directors." "Oh, absolutely, absolutely!" Whitmore backpedaled quickly, raising his hands in mock surrender. "I simply meant that certain social circles can be rather traditional in their perspectives. Old families, established customs, you understand." The explanation sounded reasonable on the surface, but David caught the poisonous subtext. Whitmore was testing boundaries, probing to see how much casual racism he could inject into their conversation. "I think Amara handles herself quite well in any social circle," David replied coldly. "Perhaps the question isn't whether she belongs, but whether certain attitudes belong in modern society." Whitmore's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing a flash of naked hostility before snapping back into place. "You're absolutely right, of course. Please excuse me while I check on the evening's arrangements." Outside on the terrace, Amara breathed in the cool evening air, grateful for the respite from the ballroom's political undercurrents. The infinity pool reflected the hotel's lights like a mirror, creating an almost magical atmosphere that reminded her why she had fallen in love with Atlanta's beauty, despite its complicated history. She pulled out her phone to check messages from her law firm, where 3 junior associates were working late on a discrimination case that bore unsettling similarities to patterns she had researched about Whitmore Corporation. Back inside, Whitmore excused himself from David and made his way to the bar where his inner circle waited like conspirators planning a coup. The champagne had been flowing freely for over an hour, and their conversations grew increasingly unguarded as alcohol dissolved their public restraint. "Desperate times call for desperate measures," Judge Morrison observed, swirling his bourbon with practiced movements. "Though I never thought I'd see the day when Reginald Whitmore needed financial salvation from their kind." "The natural order is changing too quickly," Senator Blake added with obvious distaste, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "These people think they can simply buy their way into our circles, our clubs, our neighborhoods. They don't understand the traditions that built this city." Whitmore drained his 3rd glass of champagne in 20 minutes, feeling the alcohol burn away his careful restraint like acid eating through metal. "Sometimes I wonder if my grandfather's generation had the right approach to keeping things properly ordered." Bank President Mitchell chuckled darkly, his laughter carrying an ugly undertone that would have chilled anyone overhearing their conversation. "Well, there are still ways to remind certain people of their proper place in the social hierarchy." The group's shared laughter sounded like wolves preparing to hunt. Their perceived superiority and financial influence made them careless with their words, forgetting that hotel staff moved silently around them, serving drinks and clearing tables while absorbing every poisonous syllable. "Gentlemen, let's get some fresh air," Whitmore suggested, his voice slightly slurred from alcohol and mounting rage. "I need to clear my head before finalizing this distasteful business arrangement." The 4 men made their way toward the terrace, their footsteps unsteady from champagne and arrogance. Through the glass doors they could see Amara standing alone by the pool, her silhouette elegant against the shimmering water, completely unaware of the approaching storm. "Look at that!" Judge Morrison sneered as the four men stepped onto the terrace, his voice dripping with contempt. Acting like she owns the damn place. Probably never seen a pool this nice where she comes from, Senator Blake added with vicious glee, her usual political composure completely abandoned. I bet she's wondering if she can take a swim without getting arrested for trespassing. Whitmore's vision tunneled as he focused on Amara's lone figure by the pool. All his frustrations, the mounting debts, the failed investments, the humiliation of needing David's help, crystallized into burning resentment. Here was everything wrong with his changing world. A black woman in designer clothes, standing confidently in his domain, married to the man who held his financial future hostage. "Watch this, gentlemen," he muttered to his companions, straightening his bow tie like a soldier preparing for battle. "Time to restore some natural order to this evening." The alcohol had transformed Whitmore from a desperate businessman into something far more dangerous, a cornered predator with nothing left to lose and a lifetime of racial prejudice to fuel his rage. Amara turned as she heard multiple footsteps approaching across the marble terrace. Four men in expensive tuxedos walked toward her with predatory confidence, their faces flushed with alcohol and malicious intent. Her prosecutor instincts immediately recognized the pack mentality, the way they had positioned themselves to block her escape routes. "Excuse me, miss," Whitmore called out, his voice carrying across the terrace with false politeness that fooled no one. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced." Amara smiled politely despite the warning bells in her head. "I'm Amara Johnson. My husband David and I are guests here tonight supporting the Children's Education Foundation." "Johnson," Whitmore repeated slowly, as if the name tasted bitter on his tongue. He stepped closer, invading her personal space with deliberate aggression. "And what exactly qualifies someone like you to attend an event of this caliber?" The question hit like a slap across the face. Amara's legal training kicked in, keeping her voice level despite the obvious provocation and the way these men were slowly surrounding her, like wolves circling wounded prey. "We're here for the same reason as everyone else, to support a worthy cause and contribute to our community." "Contribute?" Bank President Mitchell laughed harshly, the sound echoing off the hotel walls. "What exactly have your people ever contributed besides crime statistics and welfare dependency?" "That's enough," Amara said firmly, her prosecutor voice cutting through their drunken hostility. "I think you gentlemen have had far too much to drink. I'm going to rejoin my husband now." But as she moved toward the door, Whitmore stepped sideways, deliberately blocking her path. His companions spread out slightly, forming a loose semicircle that trapped her near the pool's edge like hunters cornering their quarry. "Not so fast, sweetheart," Whitmore said with a predatory grin that revealed his true nature. "I think it's time someone explained the rules to you. See, there's a certain order to things in this city, traditions that go back generations." "Mr. Whitmore," Amara said, her voice deadly calm despite her racing heart, "I strongly suggest you step aside before you say something you'll deeply regret." "Regret?" Senator Blake laughed shrilly. "The only regret here is letting your kind think you belong in civilized society. You're nothing but affirmative action trash dressed up in stolen clothes." Amara's eyes blazed with controlled fury, but she maintained her composure. 20 years of facing down hostile judges, racist prosecutors, and corrupt officials had taught her never to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. "Ladies and gentlemen record everything these days," she said pointedly, nodding toward the ballroom where several guests had noticed the confrontation and were discreetly filming through the glass doors. "Let them record," Whitmore snarled, his mask of civility completely shattered. The alcohol and his companions' encouragement had unleashed decades of suppressed hatred. "Maybe it's time people saw what happens when you forget your place." Judge Morrison stepped closer, his breath reeking of bourbon and malice. "You think because you married some tech monkey you can waltz into our world? This isn't your neighborhood community center, girl. This is where real families build real legacies." "Your husband might have money," Senator Blake added viciously, "but money can't buy breeding. It can't wash away what you really are underneath all that designer fabric." Amara felt her back nearly touching the pool's edge as they pressed closer. The water lapped gently behind her, its peaceful sound a stark contrast to the ugly hatred spewing from these supposedly distinguished pillars of society. You want to know what your problem is? Whitmore continued, his voice rising with each word. You actually believe you're equal to us. You think those degrees and that expensive dress make you our peer. But we see right through the costume to the ghetto trash underneath. Inside the ballroom, David finished his conversation with the hotel manager about donation procedures and looked around for Amara. Through the glass terrace doors, he could see a crowd gathered near the pool, but the angle prevented him from identifying the people involved. "Mr. Johnson," called a waiter carrying a silver tray. "Your wife asked me to tell you she's getting some air on the terrace." David nodded and began making his way through the crowd, stopping occasionally to shake hands with business acquaintances who wanted to congratulate him on his company's recent successes. Outside, the confrontation reached a boiling point as Whitmore's hatred finally overwhelmed any remaining restraint. "You know what really pisses me off?" he roared, pointing an accusing finger inches from Amara's face. "People like you coming into our spaces, taking our opportunities, and then having the fucking audacity to act like you earned it through merit instead of racial quotas and white guilt. Your husband thinks he's so smart with his little computer program," Judge Morrison added with a sneer. "But we know the truth. The only reason he got those government contracts is because some bleeding heart liberals needed to fill their diversity requirements. And now you parade around here like you're something special," Senator Blake spat. "Like you're not just another welfare queen who got lucky enough to marry above her station." Amara's hands trembled with rage, but she kept her voice steady. "You're making a serious mistake, gentlemen. My husband's technology could save Mr. Whitmore's company from bankruptcy. Do you really want to jeopardize that over your personal prejudices?" "Bankruptcy," Whitmore laughed maniacally. "You think I'd rather go broke than deal with your kind? Maybe bankruptcy is preferable to selling my soul to ghetto scum who should be grateful we even acknowledge their existence." The words hung in the air like poison gas. Around them, hotel guests pressed closer to the glass doors, their phones recording every venomous syllable. Social media notifications were already pinging as the first videos uploaded to Instagram and Twitter. "You want to know what I really think?" Whitmore continued, his voice reaching a crescendo of hatred. "I think you and your monkey husband should crawl back to whatever crack-infested housing project spawned you before real Americans decide to put you back where you belong." He stepped forward aggressively, his face twisted with pure malice. "This isn't your world, bitch. It never was and never will be. You're just a temporary inconvenience that needs to be reminded of reality." Amara realized with crystal clarity that these men had moved beyond verbal assault into genuinely dangerous territory. Their pack mentality, fueled by alcohol and years of unchallenged privilege, had created a perfect storm of racist violence. "Mr. Whitmore," she said with the authority of someone who had faced down killers in courtrooms, "you have exactly 10 seconds to step aside before I start screaming for security." "Security?" He laughed wildly. "Sweetheart, I own the security in this place. I own the police in this city. I own judges, senators, and bank presidents. Who exactly do you think is going to help a little ghetto princess against Atlanta's most powerful families?" That's when Whitmore made his fatal mistake. Consumed by rage and emboldened by his companion's encouragement, he grabbed Amara by the shoulders and prepared to teach her what he considered a much-needed lesson about knowing her place in his carefully ordered world. Neither he nor his accomplices noticed David Johnson pushing through the terrace doors, his face a mask of controlled fury as he witnessed the assault on his wife. The next 60 seconds would destroy Whitmore's empire and change 4 lives forever. "What the hell are you doing here? This isn't some food stamp charity dinner. Get your ghetto ass back to wherever you crawled out from before I call security to drag you out." The vicious words exploded from Whitmore's mouth as his hands grabbed Amara's shoulders with violent force. His face contorted with pure hatred as decades of suppressed racism finally erupted. "You don't belong with civilized people. Know your damn place, you worthless piece of trash!" Without warning, Whitmore's manicured hands shoved Amara backward with all his strength. Her body flew through the air, designer gown flowing like broken wings, before crashing into the pool with explosive force. Water erupted everywhere as Amara disappeared beneath the surface. When she emerged, gasping and choking, mascara streamed down her face in black rivers, while her elegant dress clung to her body like a shroud. Whitmore stood at the pool's edge, adjusting his tuxedo with savage satisfaction. Maybe now you'll remember where you belong. He sneered at the crowd of shocked guests, recording everything on their phones. That's when David Johnson burst through the terrace doors like an avenging angel. "Get away from my wife!" The roar silenced the entire terrace. David's voice carried the authority of a man who had built an empire from nothing, and every person present felt the power radiating from his fury. Whitmore spun around, his face draining of color as he saw David charging toward him. For the first time that evening, genuine fear flickered in the billionaire's eyes. "David, this is just a misunderstanding," Whitmore stammered, suddenly realizing the magnitude of his mistake. "I had too much to drink. I didn't mean—" "You pushed my wife into a pool and called her trash." David's voice cut through Whitmore's pathetic excuses like a blade. "In front of everyone. You think money gives you the right to assault my family?" David helped Amara out of the water, his gentle touch contrasting sharply with the murderous rage in his eyes. Hotel staff rushed forward with towels while guests continued filming the billionaire's public meltdown. "Please, David, we can work this out," Whitmore begged, his desperation now visible to everyone. "Our deal, our partnership, we need each other. Don't let emotion destroy a beneficial business relationship." David's laugh was cold enough to freeze blood. "Business relationship? You just destroyed any possibility of that when you showed your true character." "But you need my distribution network," Whitmore pleaded. "My connections, my resources. Think about your company's future." "My company's future." David's voice dropped to a deadly whisper that somehow carried across the silent terrace. "Reginald, you pathetic fool, you have no idea what you've just done." Whitmore's face crumpled as the implications began sinking in. Without David's AI technology, his company would collapse within months. The board meeting scheduled for Monday would become a liquidation hearing. "I'll pay double," he offered frantically. "Triple the original amount. Name your price, anything you want." "There isn't enough money in your failing empire to undo what you just did," David replied with ice-cold finality. Senator Blake tried to intervene, her political instincts kicking in. "Gentlemen, surely we can resolve this misunderstanding privately. No need for hasty decisions that could harm everyone involved." "Misunderstanding?" Amara spoke for the first time since emerging from the pool, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had prosecuted criminals far more dangerous than these cowards. "There's no misunderstanding about racist assault captured on dozens of phones." Judge Morrison attempted damage control. "Now see here, this has gotten out of hand. Perhaps if we all just calm down—" "Calm down?" David's voice rose again. "You stood there and watched a billionaire assault my wife while spouting racial slurs, and you want us to calm down?" Whitmore dropped to his knees on the marble terrace, his dignity evaporating like morning mist. "David, please! My company employs 3,000 people. My family has built this empire over generations. Don't destroy everything over one moment of poor judgment." "Poor judgment?" David stared down at the groveling billionaire with contempt. "You showed me exactly who you are, Reginald, and now you'll live with the consequences." "The deal is terminated," David announced to the crowd. "Permanently. Techflow Industries will never do business with Whitmore Corporation or any of his associates." Gasps echoed across the terrace as the financial implications hit the assembled guests. Whitmore Corporation's stock would plummet when news broke. Creditors would panic. The empire would crumble. "You can't do this!" Whitmore screamed, his composure completely shattered. "I'll sue you for breach of contract. I'll destroy your reputation." "With what lawyers?" David asked mockingly. "With what money? Your company will be bankrupt before you can file paperwork." Whitmore's face turned purple with rage and desperation. "This is blackmail! You're using one mistake to steal everything my family built." "I'm not stealing anything," David replied coldly. "I'm simply choosing not to save you from your own racism. There's a difference." The crowd watched in stunned silence as Atlanta's most powerful businessman begged for mercy from the man he had just tried to humiliate. Phone cameras captured every moment of Whitmore's complete destruction. "My grandfather would roll over in his grave," Whitmore wailed. "Everything we built, everything we worked for, gone because of one moment." "Your grandfather would be proud," Amara said quietly, her words cutting deeper than any scream. "You're exactly the man he raised you to be." As hotel security finally arrived to escort the disgraced billionaire away, Whitmore's empire began crumbling in real time around him. Hotel security surrounded Whitmore like a SWAT team responding to a terrorist threat. Their black uniforms contrasted sharply with his expensive tuxedo as they formed a protective barrier between him and the shocked guests. "Mr. Whitmore, you need to leave the premises immediately," announced head of security Marcus Williams, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had handled Atlanta's elite for 15 years. "The hotel is revoking your access permanently." "You can't throw me out!" Whitmore shrieked, his voice cracking like a teenager. "I've hosted this gala for 12 years. My family donated $2 million to build this ballroom." "Sir, you assaulted a guest," Williams replied firmly. "We have dozens of witnesses and video evidence. Leave voluntarily or we'll have Atlanta police escort you out in handcuffs." Around the terrace, guests pulled out phones with the speed of paparazzi spotting celebrities. The assault video was already uploaded to Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook simultaneously. Notification alerts pinged constantly as shares and comments multiplied exponentially. Judge Morrison and Senator Blake suddenly discovered urgent phone calls requiring their immediate attention. Bank President Mitchell developed a sudden case of amnesia, claiming he had been inside during the entire incident. Whitmore's inner circle abandoned him like rats fleeing a sinking ship. "Harold, Patricia, Charles," Whitmore called desperately to his former allies. "Tell them this was just a misunderstanding. You were here. You saw everything." But his accomplices had already melted into the crowd, leaving Whitmore to face the consequences alone. Their political survival instincts kicked in faster than their loyalty to old friendships. Inside the ballroom, news of the assault spread through the crowd like wildfire. Business partners who had been courting Whitmore's favor suddenly found other conversations more pressing. His table at the charity auction sat completely empty, a monument to his instant social exile. "Ladies and gentlemen," the hotel manager announced over the sound system, "we sincerely apologize for tonight's disruption. The Fairmont Grand Hotel maintains zero tolerance for discrimination and assault." On social media, the hashtag #Poolgate began trending within 20 minutes. The video had already been viewed 500,000 times across platforms. News outlets started picking up the story as notifications flooded newsroom assignment desks. CNN breaking news: billionaire assaults woman at charity gala. Fox News alert: Atlanta business leader under fire for racist attack. MSNBC: viral video shows shocking display of racism at elite event. David's phone buzzed constantly with calls from business reporters, civil rights organizations, and lawyers offering to represent them. He ignored them all, focusing entirely on Amara's well-being while hotel staff provided dry clothes and medical attention. "Mr. Johnson," approached Dr. Sarah Carter, the hotel's on-call physician. "I've examined your wife. No physical injuries, but I recommend monitoring for shock and emotional trauma." Whitmore's business empire began collapsing in real time as news spread through Atlanta's interconnected corporate network. His assistant Margaret fielded panicked calls from board members, investors, and creditors who had seen the videos online. "Mr. Whitmore's phone has been ringing non-stop," she reported to hotel security. 3 board members have called emergency meetings. 2 major investors want immediate conference calls. The bank is demanding to speak with him about loan covenant violations. Whitmore Corporation's stock price plummeted 18% in after-hours trading as algorithmic trading systems responded to negative sentiment analysis of social media posts. Financial analysts began downgrading the company's credit rating based solely on the reputational damage. "This changes everything," observed Financial Times reporter James Crawford, who had been covering the gala for a society piece. "No major corporation will want association with this kind of publicity. Whitmore's business relationships are toxified overnight." Back on the terrace, Whitmore made one final desperate attempt at damage control. "David, please, think about the 3,000 families who depend on my company for their livelihoods. Don't let your anger destroy innocent people's jobs." "You should have thought about that before you assaulted my wife," David replied coldly. "Actions have consequences, Reginald. Tonight you learned that money can't protect you from accountability." Hotel management presented Whitmore with a lifetime ban letter, formally barring him from all Fairmont properties worldwide. The document would become part of his permanent record, ensuring his social exile extended beyond Atlanta's borders. As security escorted him toward the exit, Whitmore's phone buzzed with a text from his wife. Saw the video. The kids and I are staying at my mother's house. Don't come home tonight. Even his family was abandoning him before he reached the parking garage. This isn't over, he screamed over his shoulder as security pushed him through the hotel's service entrance. You'll regret crossing the Whitmore family. But his threats rang hollow. Everyone present understood they were witnessing the complete destruction of a man who had confused wealth with worth, power with respect. The videos would ensure his racist assault lived forever in digital infamy. By midnight, Reginald Whitmore had transformed from Atlanta's most feared businessman into social media's most hated villain. By 6 a.m. the next morning, the pool assault video had exploded across every major news platform in America. CNN ran it as their lead story. Fox News dissected it frame by frame. MSNBC invited civil rights leaders for panel discussions. The hashtag #Poolgate had 2.3 million mentions and climbing. This is Anderson Cooper 360. Tonight, we examine how one moment of racist violence destroyed a billion-dollar empire in real time, announced the silver-haired anchor as the assault video played for the millionth time. Whitmore Corporation's headquarters resembled a war zone. Protesters filled the sidewalks carrying signs reading, "Racism has consequences," and "Justice for Amara." News vans lined the street while reporters ambushed employees entering the building. Inside the marble-walled boardroom, emergency meetings raged as board members tried salvaging what remained of their reputations. Stock prices had crashed 47% in overnight trading. Major clients were terminating contracts via email to avoid phone conversations. Reginald's actions have made our company radioactive, declared board chairman William Stevens, his voice heavy with 40 years of corporate experience. Nike pulled their advertising account. Delta canceled our property management contracts. Even our law firm is distancing themselves. Margaret, Whitmore's longtime assistant, fielded resignation calls from senior executives fleeing the sinking ship. 3 VPs have already submitted letters. Our head of public relations quit via text message. She said her career couldn't survive association with this scandal. Meanwhile, federal investigators had taken notice of the viral video and its implications. FBI agent Maria Santos reviewed Whitmore Corporation's files, while civil rights attorneys lined up to represent Amara in what promised to be the most publicized discrimination case in Georgia history. The video evidence is overwhelming, Santos explained to her supervisor, but our background investigation revealed a pattern spanning 20 years. Discriminatory hiring practices, minority contractors mysteriously losing bids, housing developments that somehow never approved black buyers. The Department of Justice opened a formal civil rights investigation within 72 hours. Federal subpoenas arrived at Whitmore Corporation demanding employment records, contractor lists, and internal communications dating back to 2005. Whitmore himself had become a prisoner in his Buckhead mansion, surrounded by protesters and media crews camping outside his iron gates. His wife, Jennifer, had taken their children to her mother's estate in Charleston, refusing his desperate phone calls. I can't show my face at the country club, Jennifer told her mother during a tearful conversation. Caroline's tennis team kicked her off because other parents don't want their children associated with our family name. Former business partners rushed to publicly condemn Whitmore's actions, desperate to protect their own reputations. Real estate mogul Thomas Richmond issued a statement. The behavior displayed in that video represents everything antithetical to modern business values. But the most devastating blow came from an unexpected source. Margaret, his loyal assistant for 15 years, had been secretly recording conversations for months after witnessing increasingly racist behavior. She contacted the FBI with a treasure trove of audio evidence. He used racial slurs regularly when discussing contracts with minority-owned businesses, Margaret testified to federal investigators. I have recordings of him instructing lawyers to find legal ways to exclude black contractors from bidding processes. The audio recordings leaked to major news networks, providing damning context for the pool assault. Whitmore's voice could be heard clearly discussing keeping those people in their place and maintaining neighborhood standards through discriminatory practices. 3 months later, the civil trial began in Fulton County Superior Court. Media attention rivaled high-profile celebrity cases as protesters filled the courthouse steps. Amara, represented by Atlanta's most prestigious civil rights firm, sat composed at the plaintiff's table while cameras captured every moment. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," began attorney Michelle Roberts during opening statements, "this case represents more than one moment of violence. It exposes decades of systematic racism disguised as business practices." The defense team, led by expensive white attorneys from New York, attempted portraying Whitmore as a reformed man who had learned from his mistakes, but the evidence buried their arguments. Video testimony from former employees revealed a corporate culture of casual racism. Contractor James Washington described losing a $50 million project after Whitmore discovered his minority-owned status. Housing developer Patricia Lee documented suspicious permit delays that only affected black-owned developments. Mr. Whitmore's company employed 3,000 people, testified former HR Director Linda Martinez. Only 12 were black, and most worked in janitorial or cafeteria positions despite qualified applicants for management roles. The jury deliberated for only 6 hours. Their verdict sent shockwaves through Atlanta's business community. $15 million in compensatory damages, plus $50 million in punitive damages designed to send a message that racism would no longer be tolerated in corporate America. Judge Patricia Reynolds, a no-nonsense jurist with 30 years of experience, delivered a scathing rebuke during sentencing. "Mr. Whitmore, your actions represent the worst aspects of American business culture. You used wealth and influence to perpetuate racial discrimination while hiding behind charitable donations and social respectability. The court finds your behavior not only morally reprehensible but economically destructive to our community's growth and prosperity," she continued. "This judgment reflects society's rejection of the racist attitudes you represent." Whitmore Corporation filed for bankruptcy protection within weeks of the verdict. The company's assets were liquidated to pay legal settlements and creditor debts. 3,000 employees lost their jobs as the empire collapsed completely. Federal prosecutors filed additional charges for housing discrimination and civil rights violations. Whitmore faced potential prison time as multiple investigations uncovered decades of systematic racism disguised as legitimate business practices. "The Whitmore case has become a watershed moment," explained legal analyst Rebecca Carter on CNN. "It demonstrates how modern technology and social media can expose racism that previously hid behind closed doors and corporate boardrooms." Other corporations scrambled to review their own practices, terrified of similar exposure. Diversity training programs expanded nationwide as businesses realized the financial consequences of discriminatory behavior in the viral video age. David Johnson's company, meanwhile, experienced unprecedented growth. Major corporations competed for partnerships with Tech Flow Industries, eager to associate with the moral courage he had displayed. The company's valuation tripled within 6 months. "We've received partnership offers from every Fortune 500 company," David told Bloomberg News, "but we're carefully vetting potential partners to ensure alignment with our values of equality and respect." Amara used her settlement money to establish the Equal Justice Technology Foundation, providing legal resources for discrimination victims. Her organization quickly became the most effective civil rights advocacy group in the Southeast. The pool assault video, now studied in business schools as a case study in corporate reputation management, served as a permanent reminder that racism carries devastating consequences in modern America. Whitmore's name became synonymous with the phrase "going viral for the wrong reasons," ensuring his racist legacy would be remembered long after his business empire crumbled into dust. 5 years after the pool assault that destroyed an empire, Atlanta's skyline had transformed dramatically. The gleaming Tech Flow Industries tower dominated the downtown district, its 40-story glass facade reflecting the city's progressive evolution under new leadership. David Johnson stood in his corner office on the top floor, gazing out at the bustling metropolis below. His company now employed over 15,000 people across 12 countries, making him one of the youngest billionaires in American history. The AI technology that Whitmore had desperately needed was now revolutionizing industries worldwide. "The quarterly diversity report shows we're leading the tech sector in minority representation," announced Chief Operating Officer Patricia Washington, a brilliant black engineer who had joined Google specifically because of TechFlow's inclusive culture. David smiled, remembering the scared young programmer he had been just 5 years earlier. Excellence comes from embracing talent regardless of background. Whitmore never understood that principle, and it cost him everything. Across town, Amara adjusted her judicial robes in the chambers of the federal district court. At 47, she had become the youngest black female federal judge in Georgia history, nominated by the president himself after her civil rights advocacy gained national recognition. Her Equal Justice Technology Foundation had filed over 200 successful discrimination lawsuits, recovering $300 million for victims while forcing systematic changes in corporate hiring practices. The foundation's annual gala raised more money than Whitmore's charity event ever had, proving that genuine inclusion generated greater community support than exclusive elitism. Your Honor, the Whitmore v. State of Georgia case is ready for review, announced her clerk, carrying a thick legal brief. Amara nodded grimly. Even from federal prison, Reginald Whitmore continued filing frivolous appeals, desperately attempting to overturn his conviction for civil rights violations. Each motion was denied with increasing judicial impatience. The former billionaire had aged rapidly during his 3-year federal sentence. His hair turned completely gray, his expensive suits replaced by orange jumpsuits, his marble mansions sold to pay legal fees and victim settlements. Prison guards reported that other inmates mocked him constantly, calling him pool boy in reference to his viral infamy. Inmate Whitmore has been denied parole again, reported Corrections Officer Samuel Brown, a black man who took particular satisfaction in delivering the news. His racist statements during psychological evaluations convinced the board he poses continued danger to community safety. Whitmore's family had completely disowned him. His wife divorced him while he awaited trial, taking custody of their children and reverting to her maiden name. His son changed his own name legally to avoid association with the Whitmore legacy. The mansion that once hosted Atlanta's elite now served as a community center for underprivileged youth. The irony wasn't lost on anyone that black and Latino children now played basketball where Whitmore had once entertained racist politicians and discriminatory business leaders. Margaret, his former assistant, had written a best-selling memoir titled Behind Closed Doors, Working for a Racist Billionaire. The book's proceeds funded scholarships for minority students pursuing law degrees, ensuring Whitmore's legacy contributed to the very equality he had fought against. Mr. Whitmore thought wealth and connections made him untouchable, Margaret wrote in the book's conclusion. But one moment of authentic character revealed his true nature to the world. No amount of money can protect you from the consequences of hatred. The pool at the Fairmont Grand Hotel had been renamed the Amara Johnson Reflection Pool in honor of her courage and dignity during the assault. A bronze plaque commemorated the moment when social media justice conquered old money racism. Tourism to the hotel increased dramatically as visitors wanted to see the exact location where a viral video changed American business culture. The pool had become an unlikely pilgrimage site for civil rights supporters. Standing together on their penthouse balcony overlooking the city they had helped transform, David and Amara reflected on the journey from that horrible night to their current success. "That monster thought he could humiliate me into silence," Amara said, her voice filled with quiet strength. "Instead, he revealed his true character to the world and destroyed himself in the process." "Real change happens when ordinary people refuse to accept injustice as normal," David added, pulling his wife close. "When we stand up, speak out, and demand better from our communities and institutions." The couple's story had become required reading in business schools, law schools, and civil rights organizations nationwide. Their example proved that dignity and principle could triumph over wealth and privilege when supported by modern technology and social media accountability. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear that justice eventually prevails. Like this video if you believe everyone deserves respect regardless of race. Subscribe for more stories where bullies face real consequences for their actions. Tell us in the comments, have you ever witnessed racism in your workplace or community? What would you do if you saw someone being treated like Amara? Your voice matters in the fight for equality. Remember, treat others as you want to be treated. Character matters more than wealth. See you in the next story where justice wins.